the Everything But Politics podcast.
Welcome back to the 173rd edition of the Everything But Politics podcast. Super pumped up for this episode. We got an absolute legend joining us today who's accomplished something extraordinary. My name is Merrick Leeser, alongside Ethan Leeser and Evan Leeser. And joining us today from the great state of Colorado is Tim Perreira. Tim, welcome to Everything But Politics.
Welcome.
What's up, fellas? I'm pumped to be here. Excited.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Is right. I know you and I have been communicating for a little bit now, so to be here alongside one another is pretty sweet. So, Tim, welcome to the show. I would love to begin, Tim, by having you introduce yourself to not only us, but our audience.
Yeah. Oh, man, where do I start?
That's the question, isn't it? Always.
Well, I can start with why you reached out. You know,
Okay.
you reached out because, let's see, how many months ago? 4 or 5 months ago, I finished Walk Across America. I walked on foot solo from Southern California to Virginia Beach. Never done anything like that before. Not really into camping. Never really hike. Not an ultra runner, anything like that. People typically ask those questions. You know, I think my path was fairly conventional. After school, I wanted to get a good job. I got into a good corporate job, then found my way into sales, and man, was just really driven by the American dream: success, money, status, moving up the ladder. And I did that for about 10 years, and things just weren't going well. And so I felt a lot of, I went through things like depression, went through anxiety. I ended up shifting away from drinking alcohol and drugs and, you know, all that stuff I had fun with in my 20s. And I share that because, you know, I somehow found myself getting into the space of men's work, of coaching men, leading cohorts, leading an online community, facilitating retreats, leading cold plunges, meditations, all that stuff. I had no idea I was going to get into that stuff. And then it ended up leading me on this amazing, life-changing, transformational walk across America, which led me to you guys. So
Beautiful.
I guess it was all worth it.
Awesome. Well, one of the words you mentioned was depression. So
Yeah.
what I want to begin, my first question for you is, what is the opposite of depression?
Freedom. Yeah. Freedom, ease. Depression
So
is
at that time, you mentioned your early, mid 20-year-old self. If we were having this conversation and doing this podcast with him, who would we be speaking with?
you know, I think someone who is really driven, who was also driven with integrity, with doing things the right way. You know, I was in sales, and I was one of the few sales reps, or in the minority, I should say, I feel like sales reps who really try and live by sales karma, who try and do the right thing, do right by the customer, do right by the company, try and make it a win-win-win for everybody. And so I was, you know, driven by success, and I was driven by money. I was trying to create a really good life for myself. And yet, well, as things were going well on the surface, things internally felt like they were crumbling. And I felt like I couldn't tell anybody. I felt like I was broken because of it. I thought that the answer was, man, you're just not doing well enough. Like, you need to work harder. You need to earn a little bit more. You know, you need to, like, it's just because, like, you're not on that trajectory. You're not climbing the ladder, right, at the pace that you feel like you should. And that started to get really, really heavy. And so I never told anybody. I was carrying all of that alone. And so he felt really isolated. You know, he felt like, man, there are a lot of things that are going well. Why do I feel like things are not going well? And
What
so
did you
I think
think-
just silently carrying that weight. Yeah.
I was gonna say, what did you think the answer was to solving your depression?
You know, it's really interesting because at that point, what I thought the problem was not the real problem, right? I thought the problem was all that external stuff I
Yeah.
was talking about. I thought that, I was living from the outside in. I just got out of a big relationship. I moved across the country. I didn't have a friend group. I was maybe not doing as well in my role, and sales role, as I had been before. And so that's where I was projecting the things that were, that weren't going great. And so what I thought the solution was to that I thought would make me feel better, was to fix all that stuff, right? Was start to perform better,
Yeah.
and from, the perspective of, let's say, self-care, taking care of myself, really the only extent, um, the only way I had thought about it had been physical health. Growing up playing sports, and I had learned about physically taking care of my body, exercise, getting strong, started to learn a little bit more about sleep, eating well, all of that stuff. So I also felt like, hey, that's really important, which it is. But, that's certainly more just foundational stuff
Yeah.
than, than getting into the real weeds of it.
Well, Tim, so as we know, you accomplished an incredible feat by walking across the United States of America. But going back to that kid who felt the need to perform and earn,
Yeah.
was there part of you that, as you're grinding at work and, up the corporate ladder, did your health take a back seat?
Yeah, definitely. I think part of the way that I would cope with it, this stress, and I share this now in hindsight. At the time, I wasn't able to articulate really what I was experiencing and going through. Like I said, so much of my focus was on this external stuff. But looking back, ways that I would cope with it is I would, take a Saturday and I would get a workout in the morning, but then I would go drink from, let's say, noon to 10 p.m. Right. And it wasn't necessarily me in a bar just slamming whiskeys. It was me exploring the city. I was going out when I was living in New York City or Chicago, trying a bunch of restaurants, maybe meeting up with some friends. But really, what I was doing was that Saturday was my release valve. And I would not drink at all during the week, would never do drugs during the week. And then Saturday became like anything is game.
Hmm.
And so that became really deleterious to my health. And so I would go drink for 10, 12 hours every Saturday, eat maybe 5, 6, 7, 10,000 calories out over the course of a day, end up doing some party drugs, right? And so that would have such a big impact on the next 3, 4, 5, 6 days, And so I was still exercising during the week. I was still trying to be in good shape. I was still trying to eat well. But that Saturday, really looking back, was much more of a red flag than I realized at the time.
Merrick, do you like coffee?
I love coffee.
Well, we got you covered. Brick House Coffee.
The official coffee partner of the Everything But Politics podcast. Be sure to check out the link in description for more information, as well as our social media. Now back to the episode.
I feel like that's a very common way of living now more than ever, where we have a very health conscious generation, and they could be good 6 days a week, but
Yeah.
then they have one day where they go all out and kind of go crazy. And I get it, and it's hard to, figure out if that one day makes, like, what kind of difference it makes in your health. But
Yeah.
did you find that one day to be detrimental to you, or did you find it almost as like blowing off some steam?
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting, right? Because from one perspective, and I think the story I would tell myself is, man, I earned that day,
Yeah.
in a way, like I'm dialed in. My health is dialed in 6 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
I don't drink during the week, and, I'm doing well at work, and I can go out and have fun on a Saturday. And of course, we have the ability to do that. But what I didn't see was why I felt the need to use that day as such a release. What was going on every other day in my life that was building up so much? That was the part I was really blind to. And so I found myself, you're asking about if there were any other health issues. You know, I would get a lot of stomach cramps that, you know, no doctors really had no idea what it was from. They were just offering me pain meds, but that was something that was consistent. I ended up going into the emergency room twice in the span of a few weeks for stomach cramps.
Wow.
You know, I dealt with an ulcer. Um, I had kidney stones during a sales kickoff one year. And I remembered, you know, to your point, I would, when the doctor was asking me after I would go in and when a bunch of these things were happening, and I shared with her, I was like, look, I'm dialed 6 days a week. You know, I eat super clean. Like, I don't drink coffee after 11, all this. And then, you know, and then Saturday, yeah, I may have 20, 25 drinks or something.
No, yeah, dude.
And she looked at me like, you fucking idiot. You know, like you don't, and I didn't get it. I really didn't. Like when I have kidney stones, I was in Las Vegas for sales kickoff and I went in at 6:30 in the morning to urgent care. It was the most painful thing I've ever been in my life by far. I was on the floor of the bathroom, like trying my best not to just scream and wake up my colleague and a good buddy of mine who I was sharing a room with. And so she's doing the intake form. The doctor comes over. She's like, so what, were you like doing a bunch of drugs last night? This was in Vegas, right? So she's asking me and I'm like, no, I had 2 beers. It was really a light night for me, actually. I was like, I had like 2 beers, you know, a little bit of weed, a little bit of Coke, nothing crazy. And I got the same look. She looked at me like, what are you talking about? Like, how are you just saying this like flippantly? And I think that's the point is I wasn't connecting the dots, that it's not so much that one day was derailing me. It was what that day represented.
Yeah,
It was the pain that was going on underneath and why I felt like I needed that day.
And that one day can really confuse the body because you're going 6 days perfect. And then one day you do the opposite and it doesn't know how to react. Whereas if somebody drinks a Jack and Coke every single day, it's going to adapt. But that one
Yeah.
day is going to confuse it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
Big
for
time.
better for worse as well, right? The adaptation to your body, because the body's extremely resilient, right? You know this,
Yeah.
given all the steps that you put in. So let's get into that. So Tim,
Yeah.
I feel like going like through your 20s and then onto your 30s, like the perfect metaphor for you is one step forward. So being that guy in your 20s who was like struggling and, you know, like grinding at the same time, like externally looked like he was fucking killing it, but internally like crippled, if you will.
Yeah.
And then for you to move forward in your 30s, what was that like finger snap moment that, dude, fuck this. Like I'm taking control of my life and I'm going to do something extraordinary.
Yeah. Well, it was July of 2020. And I was about to get fired from my sales job for missing quota. I went from number 1 rep in the company in the world to I was getting fired. So stuff was not working. And this is kind of fast forwarding from what we were just talking about, but I had been trying stuff for years. None of that external stuff was working. And, you know, I had about this 2-week period where I felt like I had like 3 or 4 massive life altering light bulb moments. And one of them, I was listening to a podcast and it was, I just heard the line. I'm sure you guys have heard this. It's like everything in life is neutral. Only the mind creates meaning, good or bad. And for whatever reason, that the second that I heard that, it hit me like I just got punched in the face. And I said to myself, holy shit, it's me. All of this, everything that's been happening in my life is me. And not because I wasn't performing well enough. That's not what I meant. What it was like this depression I'm going through, this anxiety, how I'm casting my well-being and my internal state onto everything outside of me. I was like, it has nothing to do with that. It's all what's going on in my own head. And so that was the first domino. And so over the course of the next few weeks, as I was thinking about what was next for my life, I knew going back into sales, I knew trying to go back into tech, go back into the corporate world, like at least for the time being was not, was not going to happen. And in that 2-week period, another one of those major moments was I had heard a short interview with Barbara, I think Corcoran from Shark Tank.
Yep.
And she said, if you have an idea that you cannot get out of your head, and you don't know why it's there, but you can't get it out of your head, you have to follow it. And at the time, I had had about 5 years of the same idea popping into my head to start a clothing company. And it was like men's workout gear, making a certain type of clothing from recycled ocean plastic. And I kept dismissing it like, that's a dumb idea. Let me go start an app and sell it for $1 billion. This was literally the dialogue in my head going on. And the second I heard her say that, I said, holy shit, that's it. I'm doing that. And another light bulb moment for me was I was bent over my sink. I was in this basement room in San Francisco, all within this like 2-week period. And I was just like so overwhelmed with depression, with sadness, with anger, with just frustration. I'm like, man, I have been pushing so hard to live my life a certain way for the last 10 years. And I feel the opposite of how I thought I would feel with all this work that I've put in. And I was just like uncontrollably crying in front of the mirror. And it was like literally like something out of a movie. I'm like stooped over the sink and I look up in the mirror and looking at myself and just was face to face with the reality of how I was feeling. And it just hit me. I'm like, dude, this shit is not working. And we have to get our fucking life back. And it was like that moment. And then the next day I woke up and I said, I'm doing it. Like I'm going to start this clothing company. No idea if it's going to work. I could lose all my money. It could be a total embarrassment, but it's the one thing that has been present for me, you know, in terms of that feels clear that I need to follow. And so I feel like that was really the shift. So that gave me kind of the kick in the ass and the spark to like start on that path. And it wasn't so much about the clothing company, right? That wasn't what made it significant. The significance was that I was finally listening to the voice within that had been trying to get my attention for years. And as I started to honor that voice and question this old programming that I had really been living through and by for the last decade or, you know, the previous 30 plus years of my life. And that's really what shifted everything, was the commitment to, you know what, no matter what, there's this voice within that I have been ignoring. And that's the one I'm actually going to start listening to, even if it doesn't make sense, even if it's scary and whatnot. And that's really what shifted everything.
Was there an inner voice that told you to walk across the United States, or did you see that on television or something like that?
Man, that had come after there was about a 4-month period in 2024 that I had slipped back into a really apathetic, dark depression. And I was seeking all of these solutions for it because I had tried all this stuff over the last 4 years, right? I had gotten into all the mental health and personal transformation and all the healing, all that stuff. And still I was feeling this way. So I went on this amazing trip to India for about 3 weeks, got back from the trip and felt like there was still something missing. Like I could sense something was coming. And I just saw a video one day on Instagram, and it was of a guy saying how in 2019 he had walked across America after going through a really challenging time in his life. The second I heard him say those words, walk across America, I literally felt like I had a lightning bolt go through my body. I had like full body goosebumps and this flush of emotion or this flush of energy. And it hit me. I was like, that's it. I'm doing that. That's the thing.
Wow.
And it was so clear.
That's so badass. That's so badass. So you said you concluded your India trip and you felt like something was coming. Talk to us about the decision to go to India and then while there, accumulating that momentum.
Yeah, leading up, this was probably June, July, August, September was that hard 4-month period.
Okay.
And really, even earlier in the year, I was exploring. I'm like, man, do I move to Costa Rica for a month or two? Do I don't know, do I like go live in a camper van around the US? And nothing was really sticking. And a friend of mine was going to India on this trip with a small group, 8 or 10 people. And she was telling me about the trip, and I'm like, man, I had actually been looking to go to India earlier in the year. You know, some of the teachers that I've studied and books that I've read have either come from India or have mentioned how impactful it was and powerful it was going to India, learning from, you know, kind of Eastern philosophies and spirituality and whatnot. And I had a call with the woman who was running the retreat, and it was just clear to me. And so I went there, and I actually had a couple, like, it was more of a spiritual pilgrimage. So we went around to some different holy sites, sacred sites throughout the country, from all different types of religions and backgrounds. And my intention going in was, I just need to put myself in the space, in the environment, see what happens, you know, hold all judgments, don't expect anything, and just see what the heck happens. And I'll share this quick story with you guys, because this was the most powerful thing that happened to me on that trip. We went to so many temples. We, you know, we sang, we did a little bit of yoga, we did all this stuff, and it was all great, but there was one moment that was life-changing, and we did a little bathing ceremony, took a dip in the Ganges River. And the Ganges River is like the most sacred river in all of India. And it's also incredibly powerful. So the current's really strong. There's this crazy undertow. People die in the river every single year. So the days leading up, we're being primed on what we're going to do on the riverbanks and how we're just going to go in, do a dip, and essentially like sit and meditate in the river. That's essentially kind of what we did. We were primed with knowing that, you know, this river, while very spiritual and powerful, is believed to grant wishes. And so our teachers, the people who were leading us on the trip, were like, you know, a lot of people go in and they ask for material stuff, you know, more money. I want like a hot wife. I want a car, whatever. Right. And they're like, we just encourage you guys to ask for more like spiritual type stuff, you know, stuff that like your soul is craving, you know, to help you with maybe whatever challenge you're going through at the time. And so I was just thinking about that. And so we get into the water. It's a really simple ceremony. You basically scoop the water 3 times and drop it back in the river each time. And then you do 3 times over your head. It's really simple. But what you're supposed to do is clear your mind going in. That's what I was talking about with the meditation. So you're very clear, almost like you're meditating the whole day leading up to it. We get into the river. The current is crazy strong. We had to find a rock actually to essentially like support us. Otherwise you get swept away and people die. Like I was saying, people die, you know, every year. Yeah. So I'm sitting there in this just gentle meditation, and all I'm doing is cycling through the 3 or 4 things that I wanted to essentially ask for, if you will. And I'm just sitting there for about 10, 15 minutes, just going through one, going through another. And all of a sudden I felt this massive presence surround me. And I should also preface at this point, I had suicidal thoughts every day for about 3.5 months, at least one thought a day up until that point. And so I wasn't really in a great place. And yet, so I'm in this river and I feel this presence just totally, like I'm just totally immersed in this presence, just wraps around me. And I just feel it say, I hear you, I see you, and I got you. And immediately, I just had these like tears flow down my face. And the experience wasn't sadness, you know, certainly wasn't like sad tears. I just felt this intense bliss, like this intense peace. And the kind of feeling like I didn't want to get out of the water. I didn't want to leave that. And so that was, I think that was something that really opened me up to feeling very connected, that I'm part of a much bigger path for myself, and that where I was not the end, and I was not meant to take my life. And so that's why when I got back, India was amazing and really powerful. And I felt like that wasn't quite the end of it, and that there was something coming. So that little bit of anticipation when I saw the video with the walk, it was, yeah, it just felt clear.
It was like the universe was talking to you,
Yeah.
telling you you're meant to be here. I got great things for you.
Yeah.
That's special, and you're a great storyteller, Tim.
Yeah,
Felt
that
like
was
I
great.
felt like I was there.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
appreciate
great.
it.
beautiful. Thank you for sharing. So, Newport Beach, California, is where your journey began. Walk us through the week prior.
No pun intended.
You know, I got that. I saw that video the day before Thanksgiving of 2024, and
Okay.
so I had almost exactly 90 days to plan and train and do everything I needed to get ready for this walk. And so leading up, I just started walking a lot. I started standing on my feet more, which may sound crazy, but considering I'd be on my feet for 8 to 12 hours a day,
Yeah.
kept strength training. I stopped training jujitsu for 2 months leading up to the walk. And then it was just a process. Like I said, I didn't really camp, and I haven't done any type of ultra running. I've ran a half marathon, right? So I really don't know much about that stuff. So a lot of what I was doing was just research up until that point. So by the time I got to the final week, to be honest, I wasn't so nervous to start. I was actually just anxious. You know, I was like, let's get this thing going. You know, I've prepared. I'm ready. Actually, the week before, I was in Costa Rica helping facilitate a retreat. And so I got back and I had about 2 or 3 days before the walk started. But there wasn't, yeah, I mean, there wasn't too much crazy stuff going on. I had all my gear. I got my stroller. Everything was prepped. I was easing up a little bit on the mileage, but I think mentally, the walk was never about completing it, right? It wasn't like you go to climb Mount Everest or you go to do an Ironman or you go to do a marathon. Like there's so much, I feel like, weight in the finish line of that or completing it. And this walk, yeah, that was a significant milestone. And I knew it would be a big moment, but that's not why I went on the walk. You know, it was much more for me. This is going to be a journey of self-transformation. I didn't listen to, music, podcasts, audiobooks. I did no headphones. I didn't bring a weapon. The intent for me was surrender and trust, especially after that experience in the river.
Yeah.
Right. And I kept thinking about leading up to it. Man, who would I be at the end of this walk if I spent every single day, 8 hours a day in some kind of walking meditation or a mantra or like focusing on my breath, like really treating it as this massive immersive experience. And that's just, yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking about and prepping for and yeah, where a lot of my attention was on.
Logistically, what was the planning for that? Like location wise, where you were going to be starting and stopping every day? Did you put a lot of effort into figuring out, like looking at a map, figuring out where you were going every single day? Or was it a lot of improvisation?
Yeah, I planned the big cities ahead of time. So I wanted to hit Sedona. I wanted to go through Taos, New Mexico. I wanted to do Nashville, and I have one of my best friends in Knoxville. So those were kind of the big ones I wanted to hit that were along my route. And then go through Joshua Tree as well.
Nice.
And so the planning, like I did that plan to make sure I could do the walk and avoid any interstate stretches. Right.
I'm happy you
So
mentioned that. Okay, I was going to ask about that. Continue, please.
yeah. So, other highways, I'm sure I walked on roads I wasn't supposed to be on. I mean, I know I did because I saw signs. But for the most part, that was the big planning. And then the detailed planning would happen about a week at a time. So I would plan about 4, 5, 7 days at a time where I had my laptop with me because I was still hosting coaching calls once a week with my clients. And I would open up Google Maps and literally I would be, I would go into Street View. I would be seeing where it was taking me. I would say, okay, so, I have between 20 to 30 miles of walking during the day. Is there a place for me to stay? And if not, like on the days I had to camp and really figure it out, it took a lot more planning. So most of it was a lot of the detailed stuff was a week at a time. And then certainly day to day, I was like rechecking my route and making sure that, where I was going was walkable.
What kind of shoes did you wear on your walk across the country?
I used the Ultra Lone Peak
That's
9.
what we use.
I'm wearing those right now.
No.
Very good.
How many pairs did you go through?
9.
Wow.
Yeah, there you go.
9 pairs. Wait, and
Yeah.
what made you determine that it's time
9?
for a new pair?
My feet. Yeah. Yeah.
Like your feet themselves, or the shoe was like falling apart? Both.
Kind of both, but more so my feet. My feet would start to get in a lot more pain when it was time to switch.
Would
you
you
like- oh,
bring
go ahead.
9 pairs,
I was
or you
gonna
were
ask that.
going shop to shop? You
Did
would
you
just find an
Amazon 'em?
ultra shop.
So there's this cool thing called general delivery, which I didn't know about, that the post office does, USPS.
Okay.
And what it essentially allows you to do is ship a package. If you guys don't know about this, ship
do-
a
we do
package
not.
to any post office, and they will hold that package for, let's say, 1 to 2 weeks, up to 1 to 2 weeks.
That's cool.
And so you can ship a package to Elkhart, Kansas, and knowing that you're going to be there in a week, and you go into the post office, you just show them your ID and they give you the package. And so what I did is I had my parents in San Diego be like my distribution center. And so I had some companies sponsor with gear. Ultra sent 4 pairs of shoes. Jocko Fuel sent like
Nice.
electrolytes and protein, and a bunch of other companies sent gear like that. So I would just send it all to my parents.
Cool.
They would
And
send-
then when it was time to re-up, which was typically, I would only re-up when it was time when I needed a new shoe
Yeah.
or a new
Yeah.
pair. I would have them send it out, but I always had 2 pairs on me at all times.
But Tim, so I want to talk about like the physical demand of walking across the United States. So like Newport Beach, you're probably like, yeah, let's go. It's gonna be awesome. And then you probably like get a couple hours in. It's like, damn, I got a long way to go, man. Like Arizona's still 6 hours away. Like
How
what
many-
what was that like for you? And I'm sure the physical pain and endurance, but also the mental.
Yeah, man, there were 2 days out of 163 that I wanted to walk. And that was day 1 and day 163.
Yeah.
Every other day when I woke up, when my eyes opened, my first thought was, fuck.
Yeah.
After that first day, my body, it was just like in shock, like I was in so much pain. And that is what I felt like my first lesson was in the first third of the trip was, not just enduring physical pain, but the relationship between the mind and the body, and really how the body will chirp based on what it's used to and what you've conditioned it, what you believe your limits are. And even though my feet, I felt like I was stepping on glass for the first couple months getting out of bed, I dealt with this shooting pain in my left kneecap. My left Achilles felt like it was going to explode for a couple weeks. The arc of my left foot, shooting pains, the back of my left calf, a lot of left side of my body. And there were days I would start walking and I would be in just this limp, man. You thought I was 90 years old out on the road, super slow. And I would get into a mantra and I would start to focus my mind on a single, really simple phrase over and over. And I had a bunch of different phrases I would rotate through, but over and over and over and over and over again, 4, 5, 6 hours at a time. And what would happen every single day is the pain would completely go away. It would disappear. And so I would go from thinking like, man, I can't walk today. This is not possible. Like I'm genuinely concerned about my Achilles or my foot or whatever. And yet every single day, the journey proved otherwise and showed me just how capable the body is, and that physical sensations in the body do not represent actual objective limitations.
Wow.
And often our sensations like I always felt like, man, if I feel pain, that's an objective sign. And that's not true at all. right? I grew up playing sports. I wrestled. I played football. I played baseball for 17 years. Like I still train jujitsu all the time. Like I felt like if my body is saying something's hurt, that means it's hurt. And man, the walk just showed me how untrue that was.
What were some of these mantras you were telling yourself on the walk?
One of the main ones I can remember now is that I did a lot was I am strength, I am health, I am energy, I can do anything through God.
Love that.
And the last one, honestly, was not something I'd never had a relationship with God. I'd never even said that word. I was so averse to saying that word. But my experience in India really shifted things for me. And so wanted to try that. And so the reason I would use that, for example, is there's a study done that looks at the language that we use and how it impacts our physical strength. And I'll sum it up, briefly. But what the study found was that when we speak truth, even simple truth, right? It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Our physical strength increases. And when we speak lies, things that are not true, it weakens our physical body.
Wow.
Tim,
And
please repeat that.
when we speak truth, anything that is just a truth, right? I think the example I've heard is like, I love drinking clean water.
So do I.
Simple,
Yeah.
right? And, the other side could be like, I hate the smell of poop. Pretty like, this is what I mean. Like, it doesn't have to be earth shattering
No.
language. And so what I wanted to bring into these mantras were just simple things, were truths. And the power of the mantra really is what it does. It's not so much in the actual words used. What it's more about is bringing your mind to a single point of focus and concentration. It's like a meditation. And when your mind is single focused or focused on a single point, it doesn't have the ability to be focused on all this other stuff. So I wanted to combine that with mantra. And also I wanted to test out this thing with telling the truth and what would happen to the body. Because what I noticed was, and I wasn't perfect, I wasn't like dialed into this mantra every single day. There were plenty of days where my mind would wander for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, half a day. I would just be like in my shit for a whole day, just whining and bitching and complaining to myself. And it's hot out and these flies keep hitting me in the face. And, that driver almost hit me. Like that was the reality, right? Because I'm a human being. And when I would be caught in that place, man, the pain in my body would amplify. My pace literally would slow down. I was wearing a Garmin so I could see my pace every single mile. And so I would go back to the time and see my pace would decrease by 2 or 3 minutes just when my mind was off wandering. Right. But as I brought it back, as I focused, as I kind of went into mantra, pain would go away, strength would increase, my pace would pick up and everything.
It's amazing.
And I'm sure since this walk, a lot of your clients have mentioned that you're a better coach because of it. Do you find that to be true, that this walk changed you for the better?
I just did this 10-day silent meditation retreat. And one of my favorite parts of it was actually one of the content sessions. We'd meditate for 10, 12 hours a day for 10 days. And at the end of every day, we would sit and have this video lesson from the guy who started the whole thing. And I loved this lesson he gave, talking about there's three types of wisdom. The first type of wisdom is intellectual. It's like what we get from reading books, from listening to podcasts, right? Stuff that is more conceptual, but also valuable. The second point, or the second wisdom, is like a devotional wisdom, meaning that we can learn from somebody that we have full trust in. My brother is a really the best word is like, he's really nerdy about cars. He's a mechanic. He's a really high-end mechanic, but it's not just his job. It's like his favorite passion in the world. And he knows so much about cars. I've seen him put together cars and engines without any instruction manual. He just figures it out. If he tells me something about a car, I'm going to believe him, regardless of what I read online, regardless of what a mechanic may tell me. His information that he gives me, like, will trump anything else I hear. That is a type of like devotional wisdom. I just have so much belief in him. Okay.
Gotcha.
You obviously see that type of stuff with religions and too, but I tried to give a different example.
Yes.
The third one, though, those two are really important and can help us so much. The third one is the most important, and that is experiential wisdom.
Yes.
And that is the thing that only comes through doing. And, you know, it is like, are you going to watch 50 videos on YouTube about starting a podcast? Or are you guys going to do it? And which one of those, you know, are you going to learn more from? Right? It's in the doing, it's in the experience. And so, Evan, what I felt in this walk was that a lot of the things that were conceptual for me, the feelings of oneness, the feeling of being supported by a higher power, the feeling of being one with nature, right?
Yep.
The power of the mind over the body, what we're truly capable of. The power of mantra, for example, all of those things, to be honest, were really conceptual. And so what the walk did was brought them from conceptual to non-conceptual, or I was able to get into an experiential state where I was able to absorb that wisdom. And so how I feel like it translates, you know, when I'm in a session is I am not going off of what I heard on a podcast or what I read in a book or some idea I heard a really smart teacher talk about that I feel like would really apply to this person. Instead, what I'm able now to bring even more so, right, to calls is this lived experience of going through the most challenging thing I've ever gone through in my life and really finding my limits and exploring the depths of myself and exploring the depths of my mind, my insecurities, my fears, my anxieties, the stories and the narratives that have really, I think, contributed to things like depression and burnout and not enoughness, right?
Sure.
And allowing myself just to cook in a lot of that, right? I mean, for the first 2 months, I broke into tears at least once a day while on the walk. Not always about anything. Sometimes it was just this emotional release coming out in the middle of, you know, mile 26, and I hadn't been thinking about anything for an hour, and all of a sudden it just came out. So I think how I feel like that impacts me in those conversations is I feel like I have a lot more conviction, and that balances that is I feel like I have a lot more compassion and understanding now because of that, if that makes sense.
That's amazing. Yeah,
Gi-
absolutely.
Given all the emotions you felt the last 5 years, how do you feel at this moment?
And I feel a lot lighter, and that hasn't been the case every day since the walk ended. You know, since finishing the walk, there's been, I have been experiencing a lot of emptiness, a lot of seeing the nature of things in meaninglessness, and not so much from a nihilistic point of view, more so from the point of view that life is a completely blank canvas. And I think what I have been grappling with is how much radical responsibility I have realized that puts on me to move forward and really create a life that is 100% up to me and up to nobody else. Not just what I do, but the meaning I make in it as well. And so I've been in this in-between space. I was high on this walk,
I'm sure.
you know, like more so than any drug or psychedelic I've ever taken. And
Yes.
so this process of coming down, kind of in this in-between, this liminal space of how do I now take this and all of these amazing takeaways and these realizations and integrate them back into life and not just go off on another, you know, adventure or keep walking around the world, but how do I take this back into the community, to the barista, you know, I chat with every morning, to obviously
Yes.
the guys I work with, to guys like you,
Yes.
just whatever conversations. And so it's been really tough.
Yeah. No, I-
And yeah,
So you said something beautiful there. When I asked how you feel now, you said lighter. So going back to the beginning of the show, I asked you the opposite of depression, and your answer was freedom. And I just think I don't even know if you realized you answered that way, but I think that's the perfect not balance but blend of where you are
Well,
currently.
it's also like in order to get to freedom, you have to let go of the baggage and become lighter to achieve freedom.
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Beautiful. Beautiful,
yeah.
beautiful.
I think one of the, one of the many realizations, but one of the ones that has just become so clear, certainly on the walk, but really in the last few years, is that this process of, call it self-growth or transformation or awakening or elevating consciousness, right? However you want to frame it. Um, Realizing more and more, the more I go down this path, that it is way less. It's not about adding anything, that's for sure. It's not about becoming anybody new. It's actually more of a process of releasing and letting go of the shit that gets in the way of you being the truest expression of yourself as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, very important. Well, speaking of importance, as you've gone down this road and have learned about your health, men's health, etc., are men in the United States happy?
I don't think so.
Why do you
No.
think?
I think, I mean, obviously it's not a blanket statement. There certainly are people with the right perspective,
Yes.
sufficient perspective. The West is really interesting. Our culture is very externally focused. It is very much an outside in life. And simply put, if you look at all of the, what I would say are like the most impactful or the most profound teachings from thousands and thousands of years from all around the world, it's very clear they show like happiness does not come from accumulation, from acquiring more, from status. Yeah, there are more pleasant feelings and sensations associated with those things. Sure. But that's not, I think the question you're asking is something more at the core of our being, is more and we could get into semantics and say happiness is a feeling and it's, and it's fleeting, et cetera. But I think what you're pointing to is something was like, are people really content at a soul level? Are they feeling joy day to day? Are they happy with the nature of their life? Are they really feeling like they are worthy, that they matter, right? That they maybe feel much bigger than just this human experience and they're part of something much bigger. And do they feel connected? Do they feel connected to themselves? Are they present? Do they feel connected with their spouse or their best friend or their children? Man, or is their mind always in another place?
Yeah.
Is the mind always thinking about what could happen in the future that is not pleasant? Or is it ruminating on all the shit that has happened in the past and projecting it into the future? Both of which only happen in the now anyway. So both of which take people out of being present. And certainly our culture does not teach going inward, does not teach living from the inside out. Even you look at yoga in the West and it's this bastardized version that's about wearing, tight pants and doing postures and turning up the heat in a room and then posting it on social media. And it's just the furthest thing from true yoga. So kind of a long answer, but I do feel like times are changing, and
Yep.
for everybody and collectively for the culture, things often have to get worse before they get better. I feel like that's what COVID did. There were so many great things that came from it, but really what it did is it just poked and prodded a lot of the pain that was already there. And that's why we've seen some acceleration of changes in consciousness, and a lot of people waking up. I mean, just looking at the general shift, just to use this example, the shift of people going away from drinking
Yeah, absolutely.
and looking for different alternatives. So long answer to a very short question.
I agree. I feel like in America, especially, we live in a country where spirituality and the inwardness of the self is really shadowed by distraction, entertainment, a lot like social media. Nothing like you. I've never been to Asia, but from what I've heard, there's a lot of religion and spiritual practices that are emphasizing the in, not the out, right?
Yeah.
I feel like in America, it's the opposite. I don't know, 'cause I've never been there, but I feel like that in America, people don't often find themselves going inward because there's so much outward, so many distractions around them. Like
Uh-huh.
you said, like you were on your walk by yourself, you were only inward, no one to talk
Yeah.
to except for you and your universe. And I feel
Yeah.
like that's a lost thing now in our, at least in our country. How do you
Yeah.
feel about that?
I think you nailed it. I mean, if you look at just what the term namaste means, right? Not just to be used at the end of a yoga session, at core power. But in India, when you greet somebody, there's often, hands together at the center of your chest and namaste, or like a little head bow. And what namaste means is the light in me recognizes the light in you. And when we're both in that place, like in recognition of each other, we are one. And like, that's fucking powerful,
Yeah, totally.
And I think you nailed it, though. The West is very focused on individualism. There's a lot of comparison. Um, is if you guys just start to pay attention to marketing and
Yeah.
and a lot of ads, like especially like cars, automobiles, getting new cars, and what reaction they're trying to elicit within you to feel like you need to go buy this car. I'm just using that as an example. You
Yes.
can look at it any marketing, right? Or home ownership for one, right? And you really start to see these narratives that are so deeply woven in our culture that are just bombarded, into our psyche. So we start to believe, man, I need these things. Like,
Mhm.
all of these messages are telling me that in order for me to be enough, in order for me to keep up, in order for me to be, you know, the same status or on par with my neighbor, these are all the things that I have to do. And the nature of it is external. And then you start to really see the machine that is capitalism and what it really, really feeds on. And it feeds on the ego structure, right? The nature of the ego is not enoughness, right? It's a survival mechanism. From a psychological standpoint, the ego, you can think of it like a bodyguard in a way that's always on. And it's the reason why people will set goals. I'm sure you guys have had this in your own life, experienced this, certainly have heard this, have maybe set a goal or say, hey, when I get this promotion or I make this much money, if I get into this school, once I graduate, once I travel to this country, once I get these, new ultras, like, man, life's going to be, even if it's not as consciously explicit at that, as that, there's a subtle feeling that drives us to action because we feel like we're going to be more whole. We're going to feel better about ourselves once something, a circumstance, an achievement, once we acquire something from the outside. And once you start to see that cycle, you'll see how it will never end, meaning you can keep acquiring all that stuff. And because it's not about the external thing, it's about the fact that we don't feel whole as we are. And we feel like we need something to satiate this void that is within us. And as long as we're playing that game, to answer your question, Merrick, guys won't be happy.
Well, and Tim, so something that you mentioned earlier, the three wisdoms, right? The third one being the experimental wisdom. With what you just said and accumulating the physical material objects, that can't be learned, what you just said, unless you acquire one of those physical objects and learn from firsthand experience. Well, this didn't change my life. This didn't do anything for me. You can't. That's not something you can read in a book. You must experience that
Yeah.
feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think Jim Carrey has that quote where he says something like, I wish all of you guys become millionaires. I wish everybody could become a millionaire so you can see it's not the thing that's going to make you happy.
I feel like to add on to what you guys were saying, in our country especially, people don't get to the point where they find that nirvana or that awakening or that inner peace, because a lot of what they're putting into their bodies doesn't promote that kind of energy. Meaning, if you
Mhm.
eat processed garbage every single day and you lack protein, you're not drinking water, and you're eating candy and drinking alcohol, you're not going to become enlightened. You're not going to find God or the universe, because you're not aligning with that same frequency.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be a hell of a lot harder.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I think of it like the term that I'm stealing from my friend Alex is preparing your vessel. And obviously the West takes it and we'll say, yeah, you take care of yourself so that you can go out and perform and be the best you. And like, even if you look at the subtlety of that message, cold plunges, dipping your face in cold water, blue light glasses, like it's all in the name of what? It's like productivity, of doing more, of status. It's not even how a lot of that stuff, which is great. Like so much of that stuff fundamentally, like will make you just feel better day to day,
Yeah.
and the whole point, to your point, of like doing that stuff that is going to put you on that right frequency, it's going to get you to feel better, is so that this work of going inward is easier. You're not constantly putting roadblocks in your way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's just like make it easy on yourself.
And like they say, the body is a temple, right? And
Yeah.
you wouldn't walk into church or the temple and disrespect it. Why should you disrespect your body? Like, that's the way in. That is the way.
Yeah.
That,
That's all we got.
yeah,
That's all we got.
it's the vessel.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel an alignment here.
Yes.
Between the four of us.
So Tim, when you completed your walk in Virginia Beach, what is one word you would use to describe that feeling?
Still, I felt like I visualized the last 200 meters multiple times a week, and even before the walk started. So I wouldn't listen to music and podcasts and audiobooks, but I do have a short playlist of vision songs. And I worked with this coach, Rob Brennahan, who was really interesting, crazy background. He spent 8 years studying as like a Buddhist monk as well. So he just brings a lot of skills and presence and depth to his teachings. And he taught that, like, when you visualize something, what's really important about doing that, and you can see this, like neuroscience, a lot of the neuroscience points to this, is what's most important when you're visualizing is, for one, to focus on the details, right? To envision smelling the smell of the ocean, seeing specific details. What does the sand look like? What's like a car parked on the side of the street that you're walking by? What sounds are you hearing? Are you hearing the crashing waves? Are you hearing a live band out on the boardwalk? What do you taste in your mouth? Right? Is there a saltiness in the air? Maybe you have a Gatorade as you're finishing. Anything to tap into those senses, and is actually invoking emotion. And so I had this vision playlist that I had different songs that actually tap me into different emotions, and they're tied to my greater journey, my story, right? Like songs that just mean something to me and tap me into a place. Maybe like I tap into my sadness because it's a powerful motivator for me. It's part of my story. Maybe I tap into joy, happiness, right? Things like that. And so I would listen to a couple songs, one song in particular, often multiple songs, and just visualize the last 200 yards. And every time I did this practice, I would start crying. And just thinking about, all I had been through, the culmination of 100 and whatever it'll be, how many days, the challenges, and then the idea of completing it and thinking about who I was on the other end of it. So always bringing me to tears. So I share that because a day 163 came and none of that happened. And I didn't cry at all. And the whole walk, though I had about 20 miles, I felt like I was floating on a cloud the whole time. I felt so present. It felt like another day. Um, I didn't live stream it or take videos or anything like that. I just walked up and I had about 10, 15 friends and family there to greet me. But in terms of my experience, it was not what I expected, to be honest. I thought I was totally going to break down. I thought it was going to be overwhelming. I thought I was going to feel like I just won like the Super Bowl. And instead, I was just unbelievably present in the moment. And it was like one of the most blissful feelings.
That's,
Wow.
I mean,
Can't even
that's
imagine.
the word I would use for a moment like that. It's almost opposite of still. My word would be triumph. Did you feel that?
No, not really. And that's what I mean. I mean, I think the thing I felt was still, it was surreal a bit, but I probably didn't feel triumph until 3 weeks later. Yeah, it didn't. That was 3 weeks was about when it hit me. I was on an airplane going to Portugal,
Was
and
it,
that's when it hit me.
was it discomforting going back to regular life?
It was, in a way, I knew I was going to miss the road, but I was also very ready to be off the road.
I understand.
Like my feet, I lost a bunch of muscle. I wanted to get back to training jujitsu.
Yeah.
And so there were, like, I was ready. It was complete. And, especially going into Virginia Beach, which is a tourist town, I saw a lot of materialism. I saw a lot of consumption. I saw a lot of distraction. And I felt like it was a perfect way to end the trip because I knew that's what this work meant to me, was that I knew that this was very much a representation of my own path and going on this walk, learning these big lessons, taking them back and stepping into a world that operates that way. And that's why there's so much pain and suffering, because people are so disconnected from themselves. So in a way, I was able to be in that, and I share that. I wasn't affected by that. I was not judging that at all. I was able to just notice it, to be aware and be fully present and just be with myself with this and notice and, have the awareness like, yeah, this is the work. This is what lies ahead, because this is the thing that is the barrier from people from really feeling more contentment, more happiness, more joy, connection with others, feeling part of something much bigger.
What was
Yeah.
the recovery like by the time you were done? The pain you felt, how long did it take to get back to not normal, because you're never going to be who you were because of what you did, but how long did it take to feel less pain, I'd say?
It took my feet about a month
Okay.
to stop being sore and in pain. I remember I was like 2 weeks and they were feeling pretty good. They were feeling way better. I had 2 weeks off, and I picked up like a 25-pound dumbbell in the gym. I was just doing body weight stuff, just starting to get back into light weights, and I was holding the weight and I stepped back to do a lunge, and the flexing or the
Yeah.
extension of my toes, like that, the big knuckle on your feet, and the little bit of extra weight added was so painful. I did 1 rep and I put the weight back.
Wow.
It wasn't painful like injury, but painful like I walked 3,000 miles.
How do you feel now?
I feel good.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel better. I'm back strength training. Body feels good, feet feel fine. You know, they feel great. I'm training jujitsu 4 days a week. I just started throwing a baseball again. So
There we go.
body is, yeah, for a while, for a couple weeks doing things like going into a squat. Something I've been really flexible, you know, mobile and able to I could sit in a squat for hours,
Mhm.
and going down into a squat was incredibly painful by the end of the walk. And
Tim,
so building that up. Yeah.
did your feet physically deform?
No, actually. And I
Okay.
know that surprises people.
That's fortunate.
Um,
Very.
yeah, I just got some calluses on the inside of both of my heels. That was really the spot.
Awesome. Well, Tim, I appreciate you sharing your story with us. And today, actually, you announced you're hosting your first men's retreat. Do you mind sharing a bit about that?
Yeah. So I've been in 2022, I started hosting online cohorts, working with guys just through a lot of the same stuff I dealt with: anxiety, burnout, a little bit of depression,
Mm.
helping guys find clarity, help them get healthy, you know, have a holistic approach to health, taking care of their vessel, start to understand mental well-being, emotional regulation, stress management, and even going down some rabbit holes of what spiritual well-being looks like. And so since the beginning of 22, I've been leading a bunch of cohorts, men's groups, communities, and have had tons of requests to do something in person. And in the last 2.5 years, I've been fortunate to help my friend Alex throw about 15 in-person immersions for his company and his community.
Wonderful.
And so my co-founder, Chris Caldwell, and I, we've run a few men's groups in the last few months since I completed my walk. And so we just announced we're doing it. Yeah, we're doing our first one together for this. So we'll have about 10 guys, capped at 10 guys, host it here in Denver. Just a space for guys to come in, phone free,
Mm.
alcohol free, just connect, turn off, become present. We'll have content, you know, we'll have sessions to help guys navigate their inner world, find more clarity, experience more freedom, become better leaders at home, you know, in their relationships with their kids, at work, in their community. We got some fun things planned. I'm going to lead a jiu-jitsu session, sauna, cold plunge,
Awesome.
you know, just some fun stuff to, you know, hopefully excite guys in attendance.
Yeah, men
Awesome.
need that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
It's important.
It's a camp. You sit around a fire, you know, simple stuff.
no,
That's it. I think you could do a whole retreat sitting around a fire, to be honest.
No doubt.
agreed. Well, Tim, Ethan, Evan, and I appreciate you sharing your time and energy with us. This has been fastest hour and 10 minutes of my life, perhaps.
Yeah.
But in addition to this episode, what is the best way for people to keep up with you, your work, your retreat, and your newsletter?
Yeah, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is where I post most of my stuff. So Tim Perreira on LinkedIn, and then my website is timperreira.com. You can sign up for a newsletter, and that's where I'll update on all the events, all of our cohorts, all that fun stuff we got coming up.
Awesome. Well, Tim, I look forward to doing this again and meeting in person in the near future. So thank you for
Yeah.
joining us on
Thanks,
this
fellas.
173rd edition, brother. All the
Yeah,
best.
heck yeah. Thanks,
God
guys.
bless.
Thank you, Tim.
Peace out,
Have a
Tim.
great day.
Be
See ya.
good.